Good morning, everyone. I hope that you are all safe and well. I would like to start by thanking RSGB for inviting me to give you this short presentation on road safety support, raising the game enforcement strategy. It should be noted that we at RSS acknowledge the important role that education and engineering can play in our collective road safety efforts. But this strategy focuses primarily on the role of enforcement, with specific emphasis on safety cameras and the contribution that they can make to achieving our united goal to reduce death and injury on the roads. So the document that we published in September 2019 was recently released into the public domain. And this was the culmination of our conversations with our members, our stakeholders, and based on the experience within the RSS team itself. And it was developed because we've become increasingly concerned about the stagnating KSI figures in the UK. We knew that we needed to take a serious look at what we could do together to create a step change, in effect, to raise our game in our enforcement efforts. So today I'm going to mention briefly what's in the document, including casualty statistics, the SAFE system, key points in history, and the importance of marketing and communications to enhance our enforcement efforts, the RSS enforcement model, and our recommendations. So we are no strangers to these statistics that we can see on the screen. If we look at road safety efforts over the years, we can see that at various times we've managed to implement various step changes. So for example, we know that when legislation was introduced requiring all drivers and front seat passengers to wear seatbelts in 1983, this had a huge impact in reducing road death. Likewise, we know that when the National Safety Camera Programme was introduced and technology started to assist us with our enforcement efforts, it helped us immensely. So we've already delivered so many improvements in many areas, and now many countries are embracing Vision Zero and looking at ideas around the safe systems approach to reduce casualties further. We too need to fully embrace this, and I'm sure you're no strangers to the image that you can see on the screen. So traffic law enforcement is vital to the successful implementation of a safe system approach. It influences driving behaviour through two methods that we talk about in the document, and those are general deterrence and specific deterrence. So general deterrence can be described as the impact of the threat of detection on the penalty on the public at large, and that's helped along by publicity, which I'll talk about in a little while. Specific deterrence is related to the actual legal punishment on those who've been apprehended. So the SAFE system creates a vital link between the enforcement authorities and the agencies that are responsible for the highways. The SAFE system cannot just be written into a strategy document and left alone. It needs to be at the core of operational matters, and each person needs to know how they fit into the overall picture and how they're contributing to achieving our unity of purpose, which is to protect human life. And it's interesting to note that the UN General Assembly adopted 40 recommendations to improve global road safety in August 2020. They also refer to the need to promote an integrated approach to road safety, including the SAFE system approach and Vision Zero. So within the document, we've covered the history of safety cameras from the Peter North report that recommended the greater use of technology to promote compliance with road traffic law, including modern camera technology, adjustments to road traffic legislation in 1991. So these changes provided the means that allowed the technology to be used on the roads. The West London project in 1992, which was the very first pilot in the UK. The Safety Camera Project of 2000 to 2007. So this was the national rollout, which incorporated the DFT 4-year report into safety camera effectiveness, and road safety partnerships onwards. So the change from safety camera partnerships to encompass the wider road safety remit. And why is it important to know this? Well, because actually there aren't that many people left who've been involved in the development of safety cameras since their inception. It's important for those who are involved in road safety now to understand the history and the decisions that were made previously around safety cameras so that it can assist them in informing the policy changes of today. It also helps to understand why some decisions were made, so hopefully lessons that were learned will then become part of the road safety community corporate memory. And we're really fortunate at RSS as most of us have been around either from the start or close to the start of the inception of safety cameras. So if you have any questions at all, you only need to ask us. So if we can understand the SAFE system and we can know the history of automated speed enforcement, what we also need is strong stakeholder support and commitment for our enforcement and automated speed enforcement programs. To some extent, our stakeholders need to understand the history of the program too. They have to be fully supportive of the plan and work in collaboration together. And history has taught us that we need to have a plan ready, along with strong stakeholder support to respond to any possible negative publicity, and we can help with this. In the document, we've also made a comparison to France and their automated speed enforcement programme. They actually had support from the highest political figure up to 2007 from Jacques Chirac. They've also implemented step changes, and it's really interesting to compare their road safety journey with ours. So if we want our enforcement to be effective, we need to back it up with effective communications and marketing. And we've included the importance of this within the document. So studies, for example, like the one carried out by Monash University in Australia, have shown that strong publicity for enforcement programs can be extremely effective. We also know that publicity is more effective when it's related to specific enforcement rather than just covering general road safety messages. And public support for safety cameras through the years is well documented. So for example, in the DFT 4-year report, which I mentioned previously. It's also reported in the British Social Attitude Survey. We want to encourage the road safety community to return to the days of undertaking public perception and tracking research. Not only does this help with securing stakeholder support, it provides a wealth of information for you to use proactively within your strategy, and it can also be used reactively as well. For example, in the media. It's not as expensive as it used to be and can be undertaken relatively cost effectively. We accept though that sometimes funding is not always available for this, but it should not be seen as a luxury. It's more a necessity to ensure economies of scale and to show you that your strategy is working. And why do we need this? Well, colleagues, whilst we are winning the war in the law courts, we are not winning the war online or on the roads, and we're still seeing risky road user behaviour and people flouting traffic laws. So there appears to be a gap between the acknowledged perception of dangerous behaviours and the actual behaviours of drivers. So we know that speeding by far remains the most common traffic infringement, as cited by a study by Elvik and Varr. Most drivers ignore posted speed limits with impunity. That was found by a study by Harris, Jolly and Runge. Moreover, those of you who were around in 2006-07, when we had a lot of negative publicity, may still shudder when I utter those words that some individuals view speeding fines as a way to raise revenue. We therefore need to be proactive with our communications if we're to step up our enforcement efforts. Indeed, people, whilst they may not like it, will perceive enforcement as fair if they've known about it in advance, and that was by a study by Goldenblood. The credibility of camera enforcement requires special attention, as found by a study by Delaney et al. In 2005 and Sewell et al. In 2008. Our experience shows that speed camera enforcement programs need to be set out clearly prior to enforcement to ensure that they receive public acceptance. And this can also be assisted by setting credible speed limits and by policy guarantees that it's not for economic considerations. We need to increase the threat of detection so that ultimately we gain compliance with speed limits and traffic laws. So the vehicle speeds compliance statistics for Great Britain in 2018 found that we're still seeing a lot of people exceeding the speed limit across all kinds of roads or all types of roads. It should be noted that we use the figures from 2017 in the document as they were the most up to date at the time of publication, but for the purposes of this presentation, I've updated them. So the Ezra survey, researching road user perceptions about speed enforcement activities, found that only 22% of respondents from the UK think that it's likely that they could be checked for speeding on a regular trip, compared to, say, for example, 55% of people who think they could be checked in France. And actually that figure is quite shocking. This highlights that we most definitely need to increase the perceived perception of enforcement. So we all view risk differently, and the same applies on the roads. So when we drive down a road, we rely on our cognitive processes to give us information. More often than not, we will not give it a second thought. It happens so quickly, often subconsciously, particularly on roads that we know well. So thoughts range from knowing intuitively where potholes are, and also include thoughts such as, is there a fixed speed camera here? Have I seen the police here, either in a mobile van or a police car? So it's historic information about what's occurred on the road. And knowing this information can make us check our speedometer. We also rely on our perceptions at the time, using our senses, our eyes and our ears. Can I see an enforcement vehicle? Can I hear one? Therefore, we need to be smarter at how we deploy our enforcement resources, which is where the wide area enforcement strategy will be key. So within the RSS model, we've incorporated wide area enforcement, which calls for a layered blended approach, in essence moving to a strategy of unpredictable visibility, which is based on intelligence. The aim is to be highly visible over the wider areas to members of the public, thereby increasing their perception that they can be detected when speeding. So it's moving away from just looking at KSI hotspots and looking more to areas where speeding is an issue and where it poses a real danger. One of the partnerships who've literally just gone live with this strategy is Northumbria, and they've received a great amount of political support and stakeholder buy-in for this. And we've seen a staggering response from members of the public and the media who are all in support of this strategy. And it's an amazing testament to the hard work and dedication of the senior team, colleagues and stakeholders. Other partnerships have also adopted it, and we've seen some fantastic social media coverage, including that from Go Safe Wales and Essex. We know that Northants have also included road safety within its strategic priorities, so things are moving in a really great direction. So the RSS model encompasses a number of layers, incorporating traditional and non-traditional enforcement methods. We're not calling for more resources or funding per se, just maximising existing resources. So there are 8 layers in total. They combine to increase the risk of apprehension, with each level contributing to the deterrent effect. So to some extent, it's like a DNA helix. So layer 1 is traditional police enforcement. So it's intelligence-led, it's targeted, it's based on location and time of day. Layer 2 is fixed average speed. So this is core sight, intelligence and criteria based. Mobile enforcement is layer 3, and this is traditional core sites, and they're often referred to as legacy enforcement sites. Layer 4 is community concern. This is where the community have actually requested the police to enforce at a specific location. Layer 5 is community concern, but this is where the community get involved. So it's community speed watch programs. Layer 6 is non-traditional, increased area, flexible deployment. So this is where the unpredictability comes in. It's more about wide area enforcement. It's intelligence led. Layer 7 is distributed average speed. So this is where it's distributed on a route or across a wide area, and can often be used within an urban environment. Layer 8 is mobile, discrete or covert. So this is unpredictable, wide area enforcement in car mobile camera technology. So discrete or covert enforcement may cause an intake of breath amongst some of you, but actually if you think about it, it's in play right now on most roads. The only difference is it's in members of the public's cars in the form of dash cameras. The development of OpSnap by GoSafe and the rollout across the country of similar projects now allows members of the public to upload footage of people's transgressions on the roads. So dash cameras are now in wide use amongst drivers. Therefore, the use of discrete safety camera technology in police cars to detect road safety violations isn't really that far-fetched. The adoption of this and wide area enforcement strategy could provide another mechanism to increase the deterrence effect, provide an economy of scale, and contribute to denying criminals the use of the roads by enforcing the law, including reducing road casualties, tackling the threat of terrorism, reducing antisocial use of the roads, and enhancing public confidence and reassurance by patrolling the roads. And why do we need a new strategy? Well, in slide 2 of this presentation, I showed you our flatlining statistics. We can't just see these figures as numbers. We need to see them for what they really are, which is people's lives. We therefore needed a rethink, a new strategy. We cannot go back to 2007 and do exactly as the same as we did then. We are literally only keeping a lid on the KSI reductions that we managed to achieve then. We really do need to look to the future if we're truly to have an impact and reduce our casualties. We know that wide area enforcement works. Steve Callaghan, my colleague now at RSS, trialled this when he was project manager of Cumbria Road Safety Partnership, and they reduced casualties by 30% over an 18-month period. If we could reduce our figures by half of that, it would be an amazing start. I guess what I'm trying to say is we cannot be complacent. We need to push and raise road safety up the agenda. We need to keep pressing on, and our strategies need to be agile. So the document makes 9 recommendations, which are primarily aimed at road safety partnership managers, operational camera enforcement managers, and senior police officers who are responsible for developing a road safety enforcement strategy. And they fit really well with the HMIC FRS report that was launched this summer. They are to introduce a long-term stepped or layered enforcement strategy, adopt a wide area approach to enforcement, operate a flexible approach to mobile enforcement that is random over the wider area and not selected by rigid criteria, but actually is based on intelligence. Plan to introduce covert enforcement over the wider area to increase the general deterrence effect and the enhanced perception of enforcement. So it's moving to that unpredictable visibility. Include a proactive marketing strategy to support enforcement interventions, and that is extremely key, as is for our interventions to be underpinned by data. Increase stakeholder support from the public, civic leaders and colleagues by proactive internal and external marketing, which links into other areas of policing. Road safety isn't just about helping people to get across the road safely or to travel on the road safely per se. It's about those other things that I mentioned before, so denying criminals the use of the roads, etc. Number 7 is police forces may want to consider adopting local or national enforcement plans with yearly targets for compliance levels, including speeding, which is in line with EC 2004 recommendation of traffic law enforcement. We'd like to recommend that we investigate a blended solution for camera technology that will benefit other areas of road policing that will make our roads safer for all. And we'd like to encourage partnerships to work together to implement the strategies at the same time so as to gain maximum general deterrence and PR. Working in collaboration is going to be vital for this to be successful. So Raising the Game has been supported by Detective Chief Superintendent Andy Cox of Lincolnshire Police, who is the national lead for fatal collision investigation, reporting to the National Police Chiefs Council. And he's urged all forces to download and read the report and also to follow those recommendations, which has been fantastic. So for successful casualty reduction, an enforcement strategy needs to have a series of step changes in enforcement techniques that act as a deterrence to further increase the deterrence effect over time, which helps to gain public acceptance and widens its area of influence. We need to increase our enforcement efforts and move to a strategy of unpredictable visibility, which will increase the deterrent effect. We also need to think about what's going to happen next and how our strategy is going to evolve. The overall purpose of speed management is that casualties reduce as speeds on the roads reduce. As my colleague Steve Callaghan says, no research ever shows the opposite case. So wide area enforcement coupled with proactive media through online and more traditional media channels will create greater deterrence. And for those of you who are old enough to remember a popular advert that ran in the 80s, we need people to think enforcement is anytime, any place, anywhere. Collaboration will be vital if we're going to create a step change again. It won't be easy, but by working together, we can do it. H.E. Lucock says, "No one can whistle a symphony. It takes the whole orchestra to play it." What we need to do, colleagues, is to ensure that we work together to achieve our unity of purpose. The time for us to act is now, if we truly want to stop the pandemic that is road death. If anybody would like a copy of the Raising the Game Enforcement Strategy paper, you can view it at the link that's on screen now, or please email me at emma.kelly@roadsafetysupport.co.uk. It just remains for me to wish you all well and to thank RSGB once again for inviting me to be part of the Festival of Road Safety. Thank you.